What if Sheila's next lover isn't new at all, but a man tied to one of her darkest secrets? After losing Deacon, Sheila may not be heading toward healing. She may be drifting straight back into a scandal from the past, one shocking enough to rattle Finn, enrage Steffy, and reopen old wounds Lee never truly escaped. This may look like a new romance, but it could really be the return of an old betrayal, one that was never truly buried. For Sheila, this is not just a breakup. This is a collapse. She truly believed Deacon was her future. For all of Sheila's chaos, delusion, and destruction over the years, there was still part of her that seemed to think Deacon was her one real shot at lasting love. He accepted her when few others would. He gave her a place. He gave her hope, and in Sheila's mind, that likely meant permanence. But now Deacon has chosen Taylor. And that changes everything. Because Sheila is not the kind of woman who simply shrugs off rejection and peacefully reinvents herself. Even if she tries to stay calm, even if she tells herself she has changed, heartbreak still hits differently for someone like Sheila. Rejection does not just wound her emotionally. It threatens her identity. It makes her feel replaced. It makes her feel erased. That is why this storyline matters so much. The question is not only whether Sheila is hurt. Of course she is. The deeper question is what she does with that hurt. Does she turn it outward and go after Deacon and Taylor? Or does she redirect it into something else? Something that looks like healing, but is really the start of a new disaster. That second option may be far more interesting. Because Sheila trying to move on romantically could sound healthy on the surface. But with Sheila, nothing is ever simple. Her idea of moving on could easily become another emotional explosion waiting to happen. If the writers really want this story to land, Sheila's next romance cannot be with some stranger who barely knows her past. That would feel too easy, too clean, too detached from the emotional history already built into the canvas. No, Sheila needs someone with baggage. Someone who already knows her darkness and got involved anyway. That is what makes Jack such a compelling possibility. He is not just another man from Sheila's orbit. He is one of the most important men in her history because their past affair changed multiple lives forever. Jack and Sheila's connection led to Finn's birth. It led to lies. It led to betrayal inside Jack and Lee's marriage. And it helped create one of the most painful family secrets in this entire storyline. That history gives any renewed connection between Jack and Sheila instant power. This is not just about attraction. It is about unfinished business. It is about the kind of past that never fully dies because too many emotional wreckages were built on top of it. And that is exactly why it would work. A romance between Sheila and Jack would not need much setup. The emotional material is already there. The guilt is already there. The damage is already there. All the show would need is one lonely moment, one vulnerable conversation, one reckless decision, and suddenly a decades-old scandal could ignite again. That kind of story writes itself. What makes this theory feel even stronger is that Jack has often seemed emotionally stranded whenever he appears. There is usually something heavy about him. Something regretful. Something unresolved. He is a man who lost his marriage. He lost trust. He lost stability. And no matter how much time passes, he still carries the shadow of what happened. That is why he feels like the perfect target for Sheila's next move. Or perhaps the perfect accomplice in a mutual fall backward. Because Jack is not just lonely. He is complicated, and complicated people make dangerous romantic choices in soaps. A man like Jack might tell himself he is simply checking in on Sheila. He might convince himself he understands her better than most people do. He might even think that because he knows the truth about her, he is somehow protected from being pulled in too deep. But that is exactly how these stories begin. Not with grand declarations, with weakness, with nostalgia. with two damaged people looking at each other and seeing history instead of warning signs. And that is why this possible pairing could be so explosive. Jack would not be walking into the unknown. He would be walking back into something he already knows is risky, and doing it anyway. That makes it more dangerous, not less. If Sheila reconnects with Jack, it would not just be about replacing Deacon. It would be about reclaiming power. That is what makes this story so juicy. Being rejected by Deacon puts Sheila in a vulnerable emotional position. She is the one being left behind. She is the one losing the marriage. She is the one being forced to watch another woman take the place she wanted to keep. For someone like Sheila, that kind of humiliation is unbearable. So finding comfort in Jack would do more than soothe her loneliness. It would restore her sense of significance. Because Jack is not random. Jack is a man tied to one of the biggest secrets of Sheila's life. He is living proof that she once had the power to alter an entire family's future. Reconnecting with him would remind Sheila of something she never fully forgets. She has changed lives before, and she can still do it again. That makes this possible romance darker than it first appears. On the surface, it could look like two lonely people rediscovering an old connection. Underneath, it could be Sheila rebuilding her emotional leverage one step at a time. And if she starts to feel empowered again through Jack, then everyone around them should be worried. Because a heartbroken Sheila is dangerous. But a heartbroken Sheila who starts feeling desired, relevant, and emotionally reactivated. That version may be even worse. One of the biggest reasons this twist would hit so hard is Lee. A renewed Sheila-Jack connection would not just create awkwardness. It would reopen one of Lee's deepest wounds. Jack's betrayal with Sheila was not a passing mistake. It helped destroy the emotional foundation of Lee's marriage. It altered her understanding of her family. And it tied her life forever to a woman she never should have had to deal with in the first place. So if Jack drifts back toward Sheila now, it would feel like history repeating itself in the cruelest way possible. That is where the drama becomes multi-layered. Because this is no longer just about Sheila getting a new man. It becomes about Lee being forced to watch two people tied to one of her greatest betrayals reconnect as if the damage never mattered enough. That would be unbearable, and Lee is not the kind of character who would swallow that pain silently. Her reaction would be fierce, emotional, and likely very public. Which means this one pairing could instantly reignite conflict across multiple fronts at once. Lee versus Sheila, Lee versus Jack, and perhaps even Lee versus the entire family dynamic that keeps letting old wounds breathe again. That is exactly the kind of soap tension that can carry a storyline far beyond one affair. Of course, Finn and Steffy would be horrified. And honestly, they would have every reason to be. From their perspective, Jack getting involved with Sheila again would not look romantic. It would look reckless. It would look delusional. It would look like inviting danger back into the family under the disguise of adult choice. Finn would be caught in a brutal emotional bind. Jack is his father. Sheila is his biological mother. Any renewed connection between them would drag Finn right back into the center of a painful identity war he never truly escapes. He would not just be watching a messy romance. He would be watching his two parents reconnect through the very history that shattered so much around him. That could stir up old guilt, old anger, and old confusion fast. Steffy, on the other hand, would likely be much more direct. She would see Sheila's influence as toxic immediately and would probably view Jack as either weak, blind, or both. And if Steffy senses that this reunion gives Sheila a stronger foothold around Finn or the family, then she will not sit back and wait politely. She will go on the attack. So even if Sheila and Jack only flirt with the idea of rekindling things, the fallout could spread instantly. This would not stay private for long. The emotional shockwaves would hit too many people too fast. The beauty of this twist is that it does not even need to become a full relationship to work. A brief affair would be enough. One impulsive night, one secret meeting, One slip into old chemistry. That alone could create weeks of tension. It could reopen family trauma, trigger suspicion, and remind viewers that in this world, the past is never safely buried. And honestly, a short-lived rekindling may be even more effective than a full romance. Why? Because it keeps the story unstable. A serious relationship suggests long-term structure. But a reckless fling? That feels more like classic Bold and the Beautiful chaos. It is messier, more emotional, more humiliating when exposed, and more believable for characters with this much painful history. So whether Sheila and Jack become a real couple or just make one terrible emotional decision, the dramatic result could be the same. Everything around them starts unraveling. Sheila's next lover may not be new at all, and that is exactly why this twist could be so explosive. After losing Deacon, Sheila needs something to hold on to. But instead of peace, closure, or true growth, she may find herself drawn right back to a man from one of the darkest and most complicated chapters of her life. And if that man is Jack, then this is not just a rebound. It is a ticking time bomb. Because the moment Jack and Sheila reconnect, old betrayal becomes new chaos. Lee would be devastated. Finn would be trapped in the middle. Steffy would come out swinging. And Sheila, once again, would be right at the center of another emotional disaster. So the real question is not whether Sheila can find love again. It is whether her version of love is about to destroy another family all over again. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Jack is the perfect shocking match for Sheila? Or is this one old flame that should stay buried forever? And stay tuned, because if Sheila's heart starts leading her backward, the next fallout could be massive.